Hey everybody, welcome here to Musicians Edition. I'm Evan over here on the piano in this one. And in this video, I'm going to be covering the pedals. So I've never actually put up a video on the pedals in too much detail at all, but I did actually just get a new piano that has some nice pedals on it after being in an apartment with just digital keyboards that haven't had pedals. It's great to be able to have them again and have a new way to approach the piano again with having 3 pedals here. So we're going to go ahead and cover these, just basic how to use them and what each of them do. So you should be able to take this and apply it on your own, have a good understanding of them as well. So what we have here is 3 pedals. Some pianos might only have the 2, and if they do have the 2, it's likely just cutting out this middle one. And it just means they're just going to have the left and the right. But if you do have a piano with all 3 of them, you should have a left, middle, and right pedal. And our left pedal is called the soft. And so you can just, quick demonstration, you can see soft pedal makes you play a bit softer. When you press down, you get a little more muted sound. When you lift up, you get that full sound. Kind of cuts out some of those like harsher highs. We have our middle one, which you might be playing around with and have a bit of confusion on what this one does. This one is called the sostenuto pedal. And basically what this one does is whatever you are playing, whatever is pressed down on the piano, when you push the pedal, is going to be sustained. And everything you play afterwards will not be sustained. It's only what is being played when the pedal is pushed. So in this case, look, I'm pressing the C chord and then I'm going to push the pedal and just the C chord is going to be sustained, but nothing after. Look, I lift up and it's still the sound there, and I can play whatever afterwards and it does not have that sustain. Okay? So that is the sostenuto. Sometimes this middle one is called a practice pedal. On some kinds of pianos, it just gives it a muted sound so you can practice without disturbing other people. So if your piano, when you're pushing it, it does not do this effect that I'm showing, then it is a practice pedal, meaning just it's muting the sound so it's easier to practice without bothering other people. But in most cases, it is the sostenuto. And for this far right one, it is the sustain pedal. So the sustain pedal, pretty straightforward. You press and everything you play, when you lift up, it continues to sustain.
This lesson is brought to you by the Musicians Edition practice book. Make goals and keep track of progress throughout the whole year. When you're done with this video lesson, don't forget to mark this practice time in your Musicians Edition practice book. Now back to the video.
All right, so that is one more time: soft, sostenuto, and sustain, 3 S pedals. We're going to start off with just kind of looking into each of these and how you can use it. The most commonly used one for sure is the sustain pedal, and so that's the one we'll talk about first. So sustain pedal, you get the idea. Whatever you play while this is pressed is going to be playing sustain for a long time, as long as it can pretty much ring out for. You can also do it where you can do it 2 ways, where you are pressing the pedal and then playing, or what you can do is you can play your chord and then press it right after and hold it, and then it'll keep that sound afterwards. So I can play and then press, and then I lift up after I've pressed that pedal, and then I can still have it ring out. So that's the way we're going to try it. We're going to do legato pedaling, where we're just going to connect our chords. So let's just go ahead and pick 2 easy to play chords back to back. We're going to go from a C to a G. So without playing that pedal, it sounds like this. There's a big gap in the middle where there's no sound because I've lifted up already. So I want to just connect those a bit more, and if I do play it just holding this down the entire time, you don't notice it maybe as much with these because it's just 2 chords spaced out, but you end up getting a pretty muddy sound of the C blending with the G chord, and if I was playing a melody on top of it and all that was getting sustained too, then it would just be too much at once. So this legato pedaling is going to have us play the chord, press that pedal immediately afterwards, and then get our hands ready to play this next chord, and just as we play it, or just right before we play it, I lift up my pedal, play, immediately push down again. So that C chord ringing out is stopping just as I play that G chord. So here that is again. So play, push the pedal, Lift up your fingers, move them to G, release the pedal and play G, and then push down again with the pedal. We're just gonna go back and forth doing that here. So here it is again. So I get nice connected chords without being so muddy. And then you can always apply this to more like complex chords and movements here, you know, adding melodies as well too. So something like this. So I really like the sound of having that big reverb, that legato in between all this, but if I pressed it that entire time while I was playing something with more notes like that, without doing any releases, I get just a really muddied sound of everything going at the same time. And so I want to make sure I do those releases in between those chord switches so I can let that sound stop before I introduce that next chord. That's the main idea here with the sustain pedal. So you're always going to be using your right foot for this one. You're going to have pretty much like the big toe of your right foot lined up with it. And then when you push, you want to make sure your heel is always staying on the ground, and it's just that action of the ball of your foot, the toes going up and down while your heel stays planted. When you know you're at a break where you're not going to use it anymore, put that foot back, more in a resting position. Then when you're back to using it, heel stays down, we keep on pushing. So that is our most common pedal, and that is the most common way we use it, legato playing to connect the chords. With this one and with the soft one as well too, you can do something called half pedaling, especially if you have an acoustic piano that will allow it. Some digital pedals, pianos, is just like an all or nothing, but you can find that kind of middle point where you just get a little bit of that sound, a little bit of that kind of reverberated sound that's sustaining, not so overly muddy. And sometimes there's even songs that will say you can half pedal throughout the entire thing, like Moonlight Sonata is one that sounds nice when it's really airy, but when you don't want it so overly muddy all the way down, you just find that middle position where you can get a little bit of it. That's called half pedaling. All right, our second most commonly used one is this left one, the soft pedal. For this soft pedal, you get the idea. Sharp, all the frequencies versus losing some of that timbre and more muted soft playing. Typically, you know, the sustain one is the one where it's more like up and down action in between those chords. The soft, we're not really doing that because it doesn't really make sense to go back and forth from soft to full so frequently. So it's often just that entire song I'm gonna decide I like it better when it's played soft because it fits the mood or whatever. You know, I can pair it with the sustain as well too, so I get really soft and airy. But just this soft by itself, you're not doing so much lifting and changing with it. One way you could decide you want to have it be kind of sometimes soft and sometimes not is if you're playing with other instruments throughout like a verse, and then at a chorus or at a solo you lift up and you want that full sound of it to really stand out or bring some more energy. So for example, on a verse, I'm just chilling nice and soft. And then when it comes time for that chorus, I'm gonna lift up and bring a bit more energy, give that full frequency to it. That's pretty much all there is to the soft. That one is really easy. It's just, do you want it softer? Do you not want it? Not so much action of going up and down, so it's easier to get the hang of. This sostenuto pedal is one that is the least commonly used, and some pianos might not even have this one. They might just have the left and the right and skipping this one. But for this one, it's typically standard that we're going to use our left foot for this one. Our right just gets the sustain, and our left typically gets the soft and sostenuto. So our left one is going to be in charge of this one. If we know we're going to be using it, we're going to have our left big toe in line with it, and we're just going to get ready to press. Again, same idea, heel stays planted. And the idea with this is, again, you have to be playing notes first, and then you press, and they get sustained. If I'm pushing down already and then I play, I don't get it. Nothing happens. It's just the same. So it's only what is actually pressed already, then you push, and then I get that sustained. And this is great if you have for example, like a low bass note that you're playing and then your left hand is doing more afterwards, or there's an initial chord you're playing that you want sustained while you play a melody on top of it afterwards. So I can keep that chord sustained throughout that entire time so it fills the space while I play that melody on top if it's too big of a stretch for me to press and hold that melody and play something else. So this is a great way to fill that space. And so one example of a song that it's not written to use it, but I just think it sounds really nice with it is Bohemian Rhapsody, because what I have is I have this big chord at the beginning and then I have this switch over where my left hand jumps up here to play these high notes, but I want this low bass sustained. So what I do for that is I press with my fingers, immediately push that pedal afterwards so I get that full sustain of it. And then now I'm free to play the rest of it, which would sound like this. So you can see I'm getting those really low sounds playing throughout that whole thing, and it sounds a lot better, I think, than if I was just using no pedal. See how quickly I lose those initial chords, that bass sound, when I think it sounds a lot better when it's fully connected and it's playing all throughout there. And same idea with the sustain. I'm gonna lift up as soon as I'm getting ready to play that next section of the chords. So for this one, I'm going from a B flat to a G here. So I'm gonna play with my fingers, push, play this whole sequence out, and then when I'm getting ready to switch to G, I lift, and then push back down again once I press this G chords, and I have this ringing out for this next section. So in that sense, I'm using it the same way as this sustain pedal. It's just I'm only emphasizing those initial chords. Meanwhile, that melody on top, I don't really need all of those reverberated and sustaining out. I just wanted those initial chords sustained out. So that's a good use for that sostenuto. So that is it as far as playing these pedals goes. That's a good introduction, I think, to get into this. Sustain, again, that most common one that you should really practice. You know, the idea of what I just showed of playing throughout that chord and then lifting and getting ready for the next one is a good way to use it, that legato playing. Soft, again, has its uses. Sostenuto has its uses, a bit more rare, but there's good times for it. The last thing I just want to cover is just how these can be written. So pedal playing is not always written on the sheet. Sometimes it is just kind of up to the own player's interpretation of where they want to use them, where they think it sounds good. If it is written on the sheet, the sustain pedal, since it is the most common, just gets a PED. PED for when to push down. And then it's going to be an asterisk, a little star for when you're supposed to lift up. So a lot of the times it'll be PED at the beginning of that chord, lift up just before the next chord comes in to an immediate, again, PED to push down again. That same idea of what I just showed, that's how it can be written. For the sostenuto, it can be SOST, then PED for pedal, so just shortened sostenuto pedal. Again, an asterisk or a star when you are supposed to lift up. So sost PED, I push down, asterisk, I lift up. And the soft, they don't just put soft for some reason there. You know, using their Italian with this one, where it's going to be una corda when you push down, una corda, and then tre corda when you lift up. So una corda, I push down, tre corda, and I lift up. I've never actually seen the soft written on a sheet. I think I've honestly only seen the sustain written on a sheet with that PED and the asterisk. But, you know, you might always come across these, and of course you can always leave it up to your own interpretation and put in those pedals whenever you want. For me, when I start learning a piece, I don't typically focus on the pedals. I just make sure I can get it down, and then I worry about the pedals later because I want my technique to be good. Some people can use pedals as a way to make up for poor technique because you can just like reverb out everything and kind of hides any poor playing that you might be doing. But it's good to be precise with these, make sure we're getting good at those lift ups and push downs. And that is pretty much it for the pedals. So, hope you have fun playing around with these, and we'll see you next time.